Bang, we are back. Welcoming to the show Ian Beauchesne to talk some college football here with us for the Tarps Off Sports College Football Show. This is episode 2. You can find us on tarpsoffsports.com if you want to read some of our content, or you can go right below and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Jake Shields Podcast, also on the YouTube channel. But today we are here to talk about some college football. Ian, how are you doing?
Doing great, Jack. Thanks for having me. It's an exciting time of the year. Calendar's officially hit September. I know we had some live college football on the radar last week, but the big guys, the big names, get rocking and rolling this weekend. And to say I'm a little bit on the excited side is understating it, to put it the least.
Yeah, it's actually tomorrow for us, tonight for anybody that's going to be watching this, and we do have one of the absolute big dogs, the national champion runner-ups, coming to us tomorrow night in Ohio State as they take on Minnesota. What do you think about this game, Ian?
Well, I mean, look, Ohio State's been the cream of the crop for the last 5 or 6 years now. Goes back to Urban Meyer when he was there. He turned that program around after Jim Tressel left. Now it's Ryan Day running the ship. And, I mean, you can kind of throw them in the same boat as Alabama, right? They're more of the, we don't reload, or we just, we retool. We bring
Yeah,
in,
the ship keeps going.
yeah, we replace guys, it just keeps going. You might lose a couple of guys to the draft here and there every year, but I mean, essentially for the most part, it's just Ohio State continues to roll over teams left and right. I mean, they're a 14-point favorite right out of the gate, week 1 of the season on the road, and it's a Big Ten opener. I mean, people put a lot of stress on conference play, but I mean, when you look at a team like Ohio State, it's how can you not sit there and, not want to at least take the 14 points?
Yeah, and I mean, Chris Olave has been a star since he got into college football. He made a big impact when he first joined the team as a special teams player, and now he is the best wide receiver in college football. I was a little surprised that he was going to come back to Ohio State for his senior season, but he front runs the best wide receiving crew in college football. I think Ohio State wins this one in a blowout.
Yeah, like I already said, I mean, Ohio State opening up as a 14-point favorite over Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota last year went 3-4. And that was a Big Ten conference that was scattered all over the place. I mean, I know it was just conference play a lot last year because of COVID and everything like that. So it was really, the schedules were kind of restricted, to who you could play. I mean, Ohio State had, 4 games canceled. They only played 8 games. 6 of them were in conference, and the other 2 were this college football semifinal, and the other one was the final, which we talked about, their loss to Alabama. So, I mean, I would take Ohio State. I would take Ohio State with the points. But don't be surprised if Minnesota hangs around till midway through that third quarter, maybe, especially being at home. College football home field can play more of an advantage than you actually think it does.
Oh, absolutely. And do you think anybody touches them this year, or do you think Ohio State runs away with the conference?
I mean, just the only other team I can really think of that maybe could contend, at least in the East Division, I would say Penn State might have a way of kind of hanging around if they can get off to a hot start. And then, I mean, we'll talk about them a little bit later on as well, is Indiana. I'm going to keep my eye on Indiana in the East as well. They had a pretty impressive year. They hung with Ohio State late, and they actually took that game. It was a double overtime game, if I'm not mistaken, on the road at Indiana, that Ohio State won late on a scramble play late in that game. As far as the West Division goes, I like Wisconsin.
And they're going to be playing Penn State, right?
Yep.
Week 1.
Yeah, so if I had to pick a team from the West, it would be Wisconsin. and I really wouldn't be surprised if it's the Badgers and the Bucks in the Big Ten title game.
I wouldn't be surprised either. But moving on, we have North Carolina versus Virginia Tech. My sister was a Hokie, so they're near and dear to my heart, but I see them losing this one in a blowout. Virginia Tech always has a good defense, but it hasn't been that way the past couple of years. I feel like they need a culture change there in Blacksburg. And I think UNC runs up the score. The Hokies will have a hard time putting points up on the board, and I think they'll also have a hard time stopping that North Carolina offense.
Yeah, North Carolina really bursted onto the scene last year. I mean, Mac Brown at the helm there in Chapel Hill. I'll actually get to see the Tar Heels play in person. I'm heading down to Carolina in the first week in November for the Patriots and Panthers game. And the Saturday prior, while I'm down in the area, I'm going to take in a Wake Forest and North Carolina football game at Chapel Hill. So I'm looking forward to seeing that campus in person. But for this week, here kicking off the start of the season, I think Carolina runs away with it, and they run away with it early. I mean, Blacksburg, it's not the same as it used to be. People used to hate going to play at Lane Stadium when Frank Beamer was there. There was the term of Beamer Ball.
Yep.
That place was a nightmare. Enter Sandman to start the evening or the afternoon.
And that's still electric, but it seems
electric,
like that's the most electric part of the Virginia Tech games
the last couple of years. I mean, Virginia Tech went 5-5 last year, and they had a couple of ugly losses on their schedule last year.
Old Dominion.
Just taking Old Dominion was one of them. They lost to Liberty. I know Liberty ended up finishing up. Actually, no, not Old Dominion.
I think Old Dominion might have been 2 years ago.
Old Dominion was 2 years. Yeah, 2 years ago.
And James Madison was 3 years ago. So they usually have one.
Liberty was last year. That was that was a bit of a shock. I mean, they beat a Boston College team 40-14, and that's a BC team that ended up improving down the stretch and is, got a lot of people talking, thinking that they can maybe, not compete in the Coastal Division, but maybe make it interesting on Clemson down the stretch if they can, take care of business outside of that Clemson game. I mean, I mean, North Carolina just has a whole lot of weapons. They're bringing back a bunch of guys on both the offensive side of the ball and then mainly up front on the defensive side too. Mac Brown has a system going that I think is going to be tough for a lot of people to handle this year in the ACC.
I completely agree. I still think that's a two-horse race, and I'll tell you who my second team besides Clemson is a little later. But first, we're going to get into Penn State versus Wisconsin. Now, this is going to be a dogfight. This is going to be a really close game. Penn State is returning 7 guys on defense. However, Graham Mertz in an improved, more experienced run game, I think will be enough for Wisconsin to win this. Penn State had an embarrassing start to their last season. They went 0-4 to start, and then they finished out the season really nicely. I worry about another slow start for Penn State and having to come right out the gate and play Wisconsin. I think this is the 2 and 3 teams in the Big Ten. So it's a very tough matchup for Penn State right away, and I think Wisconsin gets the better of them. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go. We talked about schedule play with the Big Ten last year. I mean, 3-3 for Wisconsin, 4-5 for Penn State. And that was a Penn State team that last year skidded across the finish line as they went on last year. Oh, no, excuse me. They skidded out of the gate and won 4 out of 5. Sorry, I had it the other way. They lost the first 5 games of the year, and then they won the last 4. It's going to be interesting to see what Sean Clifford's able to do as the quarterback for this Penn State offense, the senior from Cincinnati, Ohio. I mean, last year put up 1,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, but he had 9 interceptions as well to go along with that. If Penn State wants to win some more ball games, they're going to have to, take care of the ball on the offensive side of things. But you look at it on the other side for a Wisconsin team. You know, Graham Mertz, their quarterback, put up 1,200 yards in uh, three fewer games. You know, Jalen Berger, their running back, 301 yards through 6 games. So, I mean, very consistent there, being able to, utilize both air and ground attack in Madison. Like I said, I like the Badgers in the Big Ten West this year. I think they're deep on both the offensive side and defensive side, especially with Jack Sanborn coming back in the linebacker position. Um, that's going to be huge for a Wisconsin team in a very tough Big Ten. As far as bottom of the conference goes.
Yeah, I think they'll go as far as Graham Mertz can take them. He is a terrific quarterback, but we'll see if he can do it for the whole season next year and keep it consistent. But moving on to now my Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Miami Hurricanes. I have Alabama in this one. I think mostly everyone does. It's more about whether they can beat the spread, and I think they even do that. Miami does have a great quarterback, though, in King. He is coming off an ACL injury, so he's missed a little bit of camp and hasn't gotten as many reps with that first-team offense this offseason as he probably would have liked. And obviously, Alabama is missing a ton of players from last year. They lost 90% of their passing yards due to their receivers graduating. They lost 70% of their rushing yards due to their running back graduating. But now they lock and they reload. John Mechie can totally carry a wide receiver core, and they've got 4 5-star running backs to choose from. I think Alabama just locks and reloads. And another thing that might be difficult for Miami here right out of the gate is they do have a new defensive coordinator. Alabama's not really the team you want to face when you have a brand new defensive coordinator and there's so much that they can do on offense. They just have so much natural talent there. And not to mention, you better put up points because you better stop Alabama from putting up points because Alabama does have the number 1 defense in the country, in my opinion, this year.
I mean, you talked about just the weapons that were lost on the offensive side of the ball. Mac Jones, now the quarterback of the New England Patriots, threw for 4,500 yards last year. He was 311 for 400 out of 402. That's good for a 77.4 completion percentage. His average pass completion was 11.2 yards, which means pretty much every time he threw the ball, he was picking up a first down. That's absolutely insane to think about. Najee Harris, 1,400 yards on the ground. Devontae Smith, 1,800 yards through the air. None of those 3 names are returning to Tuscaloosa this year. Does that affect Alabama and Nick Saban and the, grasp and the hold that they have on the SEC? Not at all. Alabama just rolls all year long. Don't be surprised if they hit into that Auburn game, again, undefeated. And the only thing that, looking at the schedule could give them a run is when LSU comes to town that first Saturday of November, if they're still playing as well as a lot of people think they will be this year. And then, that Auburn game is in Auburn. And who knows when Alabama and Auburn meet.
You actually didn't mention the game I'm most nervous about. I think LSU is still going to have another year before they bounce back and really are the LSU Tigers that we know. Again, what scares me is having to go into Texas A&M on the road. It is so loud in there with a young rookie or freshman quarterback, I should say, in Bryce Young. That can be a terrible environment to try to play in. It's very difficult there. And A&M has built a pretty good team. They're always right there, but this is one of the years where they can really surprise some people. I think they're coming into their form here.
Yeah, I mean, A&M is, the last couple of years it's been what can we expect out of Jimbo Fisher and his guys there? Obviously, I'm very well versed in the Jimbo world. Being a Florida State fan myself, I mean, he brought a national title back to Tallahassee, so I'll be ever thankful for that. But I feel like when he took the Texas A&M job, it was more so about the money than it was trying to, you know, become a household name in the college football world. I mean, A&M is, they're sitting at number 6 right now to start the year. If you take a look at their schedule, I mean, they got Kent State to start, Colorado, and New Mexico all at home. I mean, if they don't win by at least 35 in each of those games, I would be shocked. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, other than that, really, their toughest test is probably the one game that you're worried about in that first Saturday the second Saturday of October when Alabama comes to town. I mean, or maybe at LSU the last weekend of the year things get hectic and they find themselves fighting for a spot in the college football playoff. But I honestly think that Alabama continues to roll and this game's not even close and there's no way me being a Florida State fan that I'm ever going to pick Miami to win a football game.
Fair enough. And then now we move over to Cincinnati versus Miami, Ohio. Cincinnati, I think they will be the best group of 5 team when it's all said and done and the season's over. I don't think Cincy fans have anything to worry about this game. I think they should just go right ahead and wait till Sunday and tune into that Notre Dame Florida State game because they do have Notre Dame later on in the season. And that is going to be, I think, the only thing that really stands in the way and really scares me for Cincinnati to not have an undefeated season. I think Cincinnati wins this one easily.
Yeah, Cincinnati will take care of business here against the Miami, Ohio team. But in order for Cincinnati to truly push and try and make a move into the playoff, they're going to need a lot of help ahead of them. They're going to need A&M to suffer a bad loss on their schedule. They're going to need Clemson to suffer a loss on their schedule. They're going to need Georgia to suffer a loss on their schedule before the committee sits there and starts to really think about whether or not they can, let in a Cincinnati team that doesn't exactly play in the strongest of all conferences when it comes to college football.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for one of those group of 5 teams to get in. I don't think they get into the playoff either. I do think they finish with top 10 in the AP poll, which I mean, that's a victory in itself. You play at a big bowl game, but it's tough. And I don't think it's fair to these teams that do play in like the bad conferences, or I should say the good conferences, the tough conferences, to let in a group of 5 team. I don't necessarily disagree with the committee.
No, I don't either. And at the same time, that's why I've kind of always been a proponent and a supporter of expanding the playoff, not necessarily to 12 teams like a lot of people want. I think if you go to maybe 6, you give the top 2 teams a bye in the first round, and then you let 3 play 6 and 4 play 5, and then you go from there, because it was the same way with the BCS, right? If you look at it going back to 2013, you were always going to get, should so-and-so be number 2, or does number 3 sitting right behind them by a couple of hundredths of a point in the standings, do they actually have a legitimate gripe to, take that number 2 spot away from the person currently sitting and holding it? I mean, no matter what the committee ever decided to do in expanding the playoffs, someone's always going to be left on the outside looking in, and some fan base is always going to be sitting there and complaining, oh, I really thought that we should have been in this year, and it's a shame that, so-and-so or the committee decided to go elsewhere.
And I noticed you said 6 and not 8, because I hear a lot of people argue for 8 teams, and I am right there with you. If you want, I like it at 4. I would rather go 4 teams than 8 teams, but I think you would silence a lot of complainers, and I don't think too many people would complain about 6 teams. I think that's a great way to appease everybody. I love that you said that.
Yeah, again, like you look at it, right? If you're going to expand it and you're going to go to 8 teams, why not expand it and just go to the top 10?
Yeah, exactly. Because you're already making, if it's 8 teams, the regular season doesn't matter for an Alabama fan. That would stink. We're going to be in the playoffs no matter what if it's 8 teams. It just takes away from the excitement. And I love those games versus
Yeah.
LSU, Auburn. You play an A&M every now and then. You get to play a Georgia and a Florida, and it matters. It feels like a playoff game right there because if you lose this, you could be out.
Yeah.
And if you expand it to 8 teams, you lose that.
Yeah. Those games, it's like, oh, well, you get a matchup between an Alabama and an LSU. Alabama enters at number 1, LSU enters at number 4 or 5, or, maybe even 6, right? If it's an 18 playoff, if Alabama loses to the 6-seeded LSU, right? What are they going to do? Drop, 2 spots in the ranking, and all of a sudden, you go from being a 1 seed to a 3 seed, or maybe at worst case you drop to a 4. But if you're expanding it to an 8, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, that loss doesn't really mean as much because both of these teams are already locked into the playoff.
Oh, 100%. But now I want to move us forward to a team that we're both very excited to talk about, and it's Indiana. They take on Iowa. I have Indiana winning this. I think you do as well. Indiana finished 12th in the AP poll last season, and they're returning a great defense. Michael Penix Jr. is also returning. Iowa usually has a defensive edge when they play their opponents, and it makes up for, they're a bit weaker on the offense. But this year, I think they're going to have to start off against an Indiana team that has a defense just as strong as them, and I think they're going to be completely outmatched on offense.
I got Iowa.
Oh, you do have Iowa.
I have Iowa. I like Indiana. I think Indiana has the pieces together. However, I have family that attended Iowa, and so I have a little bit of an interest there. I have a buddy whose family is from Iowa and went there as well. And I just think going on the road to Kinnick Stadium for your first game of the season, again, conference game, your opener to start the year, that's a tough way to kick off the season. But however, the only thing I think that may favor Indiana is Iowa may be caught looking ahead, because if you look at Iowa's schedule the following week, they got to go on the road to Ames to take on Iowa State.
Yes, we're actually going to get to Iowa State right here in a bit. But Michael Penix Jr., I mean, he's one of the phenomenal quarterbacks that's returning. You got to think some NFL scouts might be starting to look at him. And if he has another impressive season, he could be going in the NFL draft. But I do really want to get to Iowa State here. Is Iowa State legit? Are they contenders or are they pretenders?
All right. So my whole thing with this, right, is Iowa State is a big benefactor from a weak Big 12 conference. And they will continue to be a benefactor of this weaker conference the moment Oklahoma and Texas depart for the SEC. It's only going to get worse. Baylor hasn't been relative since RG3 left. Kansas hasn't, been relative, since maybe the 1970s.
Or basketball
Kansas
season.
is relative for is a basketball program. And trust me, I would know, because there's my Jayhawk hat right behind me. That's my basketball school. So we'll have me back on when we talk college hoops. I'll talk Jayhawk hoops all day long. But I mean, some of the other schools, K-State, Oklahoma State's been, back and forth. 1 year they're good and competitive. The next year they're back down in the cellar. Texas Tech hasn't been good since Patty Mahomes left. West Virginia, last time they were relative, it was when Geno Smith was slinging the rock. I mean, it's one of those things, right? The Big 12 is only as good as its top 2 teams are. So if that's Oklahoma State and Iowa State, then I got to give Iowa State some leeway here and say they're closer to a contender than they are a pretender, just because of the conference.
So Iowa State this year, they're returning 8 starters on offense. They're returning 6 starters on defense, and this is a team that finished 9th in the AP poll last season. things are only going to get better for Iowa State. I think those players that are returning improve. And if they can run the table and then they beat Oklahoma, I don't think you can leave Iowa State out of the college football playoff. So I have to say they're contenders because I think they have a very good shot at doing all of that. The only dice is can they beat Oklahoma? And if the answer is yes, you have to put them in the college football playoff.
Iowa State lost by a touchdown last year to Oklahoma. The only benefit they had was that it was in Ames. It was at Iowa State. This year, they have to go to Norman. They have to go to Norman the second to last week of the season. That is a tall, tall task. And then again, they hung with Oklahoma again for a second time in the Big 12 title game. But again, that was on a neutral site. That was in Dallas, Texas. It wasn't in Norman, Oklahoma. And Oklahoma was, thinking, okay, maybe we have a shot at the title, the playoff here if we can kind of get in. There was some external factors going on with that Sooner program at the time that, they were in a tough situation. This year, they have a mission, and their mission is the college football playoff.
Yeah, and let's not forget to mention that the Heisman favorite is Spencer Rattler. He's coming back more experienced. He's now had that season to see it all, and he's had this offseason to get himself ready for what he knows college football is. You got to think that Spencer Rattler will improve, and that could be scary for Iowa State. But let's see how much Iowa State's improved. I mean, that is a lot of starters they're returning. They're returning like most of their offense in a little over half their defense. So they could be good, but let's stay in this conference right here and let's talk about Texas. Is Texas back? They face Louisiana week 1.
So I've had a running joke with a couple of my buddies for the last year or so. And every time Texas wins a ball game,
Texas is back.
A group chat, it's always Texas is back.
Yep.
I mean, how many more times are we going to say that Texas is back until they're legitimately back and they're sitting up in the top 10, pushing for a playoff spot late in the year? The last couple of seasons, this Texas program has found a way to lose a bad game at a bad time. They lost to TCU last year, the third week of the season, and then they fell to Iowa State the third to last week of the year. Those were 2 bad losses at bad times. If you get a win against TCU, right, you're building some confidence going into the Red River, which was a 4 overtime thriller in Dallas against Oklahoma. Maybe you have a little bit more mojo. You're going in 3-0. Okay, here we go. Texas and Oklahoma, both undefeated, both, presenting themselves to be there down the stretch and be there when it comes time to the committee to sit down and talk and make up a decision for the playoff. But that loss to TCU the week prior kind of sputtered things. They responded. They picked up a win after Oklahoma against Baylor. They got a big win on the road in overtime again against Oklahoma State, who was a number 6 team in the nation at the time. I remember watching that. That was a great ball game. But then you struggled the following week and only put up 17 points against a weak West Virginia team.
Yeah, well, I think Texas needed a culture change, and I think they got one here. Steve Sarkisian is a great football mind. Nobody can draw up plays better than Steve Sarkisian. He's taking over the helm here. And obviously they have the best running back in college football, in my opinion, Bijan Robinson. That's going to open up the passing game even more for the mind of Steve Sarkisian in a very capable Texas team that has those good recruits, not the recruits that Texas used to be able to grab. But I think with Steve Sarkisian there, I think they're going to be able to start landing those recruits. I think the culture is changing. Texas is not going to be back this year. Let's not mention it. Let's give it. I wouldn't even say Texas will be back next year. That third year, when Sarkisian has 3 years under his belt, I think you got to start wondering, is Texas going to be back?
So what's Texas's record this year then? If they don't qualify as being back, How many wins does Sarkisian pick up in his first year at the helm?
Oh, I would. Let's see. Well, they're going to lose to Oklahoma. Arkansas is going to be a tough game for them. Iowa State, I think they're going to lose. I think they pick up 4 losses this year. I think they win either Oklahoma State or West Virginia. I don't think they win both of those. I think they win one of those.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, hey, I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at an 8-4, 7-5 Texas team this year either. I really
wouldn't be shocked. However, I mean, I think you got to give Sarkisian time. I think he needs more time. I think he is the right man. I think Texas had a great hire there, and I think Texas will be back. I think they'll easily win this game over Louisiana, who is no joke. Louisiana has a great physical defense, but I mean,
Cajun.
The only reason I'm giving this to Texas, though, in reality, is Bijan Robinson. He's such an X factor. I think he will be the reason Texas wins that game. He's so hard to stop. But now we'll move it on to the game of the week here for sure, no doubt. The Georgia Bulldogs face the Clemson Tigers. How do you see this one going?
Hot take for you here, Jack. One of these teams has their college football playoff hopes killed the first week of the season because of this game.
If Georgia loses, then yes, I think you're right. I think their hopes are gone. If Clemson loses and then they run the table the rest of the year, I think they can still get in. And I think that's going to happen.
See, I'm going to flip things here. If Georgia loses and runs the table the rest of the year, they can get in. If Clemson loses and still runs the table, it's tough because of the ACC.
See, you're having trust in the committee to actually look at the ACC and look at what it really is. I don't have that same faith in the committee here. So, I think if Clemson wins the ACC and only has one loss, I think they're going to get in the playoffs.
So Clemson's schedule this year, at the moment, right now, aside from Georgia, there's no other game against any team in the top 20. They have South Carolina State, Georgia Tech. They go on the road to NC State. They play Boston College at home. They go to Syracuse and Pitt. Florida State goes to
Pitt
town.
Will be ranked by that time.
Pitt will?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe.
You're right, 20. Though. It's one ranked game. I see them having one ranked game.
Yeah.
Other than Georgia.
And then you look at it, Florida State, at Louisville, UConn, Wake Forest, and South Carolina to round it out.
That is a joke of a schedule.
The only other chance they have of playing a ranked team is, North Carolina if they hold pat and make it to the ACC final, which a lot of people, including me, expect to happen.
I expect that to happen as well. But another thing I want to mention in this game, though, is Georgia is 4-0 when JT Daniels gets the start. And I know you probably watched most of the Boston college football games. So you saw DJ. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name of Clemson. I would just butcher it. But he kind of struggled against Boston College. I give the edge in quarterback play to JT Daniels. I give the edge in coaching. I mean, you got Kirby Smart, who was Alabama's defensive coordinator. You got Dabo Swinney, who won a ring at Alabama. Kirby Smart needs a win in one of these big games. He hasn't been able to get one. And I think he's a player's coach. I think the players come out. I think they win this game for Kirby. However, if this game were to happen, maybe say 7 weeks into the season or later, I think Clemson would win this. I think Georgia is going to be the better team right now, but Clemson will be the better team by the season's end.
Yeah, I got Georgia winning this ball game. I think that Clemson, Clemson last year, right? Again, they had Trevor Lawrence. So, a lot of that offense was predicated on Trevor Lawrence and, again, Travis Etienne's ability to make guys miss in the open field and just spread them out and rip them up. It's going to be a lot tougher for them this year, I think. Just having lost Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, you got new guys coming in trying to fit the system. And I think, aside from this game, Clemson, pretty much runs house the rest of the way. But
Yeah, I see
I
what you're saying there.
I still think it's going to be tough for them with their schedule and, the ACC. I mean, yeah, Ualangale he'll be able to compete and, supply some sort of wow factor. We saw him a couple of times last year. I mean, he put up 342 yards in that thriller that you mentioned against Boston College last year. When the BC defensive line really found a way to shut down Travis Etienne, they held him to 84 yards outside of the Notre Dame game. Oh, no, excuse me. No, there were a couple other games where he got held to under 80 yards. But I just think that Clemson's going to have to find new ways to, score and put points up on the board now that Trevor Lawrence and his, lightning quick ability to bring them down the field is gone.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Clemson is going to struggle early. I think they'll figure it out and they'll get it together by the year's end. And I think they will make that college football playoff. And they could even win this game. That wouldn't shock me either. But I'm picking the Bulldogs here. And then we go over to another SEC school, LSU. They go on the road to UCLA. And UCLA has already played, I guess, in week 0, if you want to call that last week. And their run game looked phenomenal. Their run game is no joke, but something I've been saying this week is the run game of UCLA is no joke, but LSU's defense last year was exactly that. They were a complete joke. It was the worst defense in LSU's program history. I know people are picking LSU to come back, and they're saying they have a great defense. I think they need to prove it. I'm not going to believe that the LSU defense is back and they are great, but they do have that one thing you really need to turn around a defense, and that's a superstar in Derek Stingley Jr. He's an NFL talent, but he didn't look like it last season, so he's going to have a really good bounce-back season. I mean, he had, I think, 3 interceptions 2 years ago. He had 0 interceptions last year. I think LSU is going to lose this game. I think it's going to be a one-possession game. Might come down to the last play of the game. I have UCLA winning this by a razor-thin margin. Or yes, UCLA. Sorry.
I forget. Is this a neutral site game or is this out in LA at the Rose Bowl?
It might be neutral site, actually. I know UCLA is listed as the home team, but
hold on, take a look here. Again, I should have looked myself and found this out beforehand.
I think it's at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, it is at the Rose Bowl. Yeah. All right. So I mean, still, even with that in mind, I think if it was a neutral site game, I'd give UCLA more of an opportunity. I mean, I just think that LSU has such a strong way of realizing, okay, we're going on the road. This is what we're doing, pack up. It's a business trip, go out and, do our thing. However, one thing to take a look at is Miles Brennan, the quarterback, is going to be out till about the midway point of the season with an arm injury. So with that in mind, they're going to rely on, guys down the depth chart. I believe it's going to be I forget who is the backup quarterback here. Why is his name escaping me? Danny Etling? Yes, Danny Etling.
Oh, Danny Etling. I didn't realize he was still there.
Yes, Danny Etling. So I mean, he's performed before. I like businessman. I like Coach O. I think LSU finds a way to outlast UCLA.
I'm going against you here. I'm going UCLA, but now we're going to go to your team, Florida State University. They are playing. I'm not going to lie. I don't hide it very well. My least favorite college football team, Notre Dame. How do you see this one going?
I mean, there's my head doing the thinking, and then there's my heart doing the thinking. Florida State last year, to say they struggled would be putting it lightly. They had a couple of big wins. And by a couple, I mean they had 3. Their biggest win was probably at home against number 5 North Carolina when they beat them 31-28. And that was with Jordan Travis slinging the rock. They had guys in the backfield like LaDamian Webb. It wasn't a very stellar season for Florida State last year. They finished at 3-7 on the year. They had 2 games postponed. One of them being at Clemson, and I, thanked my lucky stars that game was canceled. Otherwise, there probably would have been a good chance to see 100 points put up on the board. However, this year, they got a transfer quarterback coming in by the name, and correct me if you've heard this name before, in Chuba Purdy.
Oh, yeah.
So he'll be in, and it's going to be a new offense. It's Mike Norvell's second year at the helm. It's going to be fun watching this offense. I think giving him another full year of setting his system in motion, getting it going. There's also Mackenzie Milton, the UCF transfer as well, is going to be in there. Both of them were vying for that number 1 spot in the backfield. But I mean, again, at the same time, you're looking at a Notre Dame team that last year they found ways to, grind out wins. They beat a Clemson team that was number 1 at the time, 47-40 in double overtime.
Without their quarterback.
Without their starting quarterback. But still, a win's a win, man. I mean, Clemson was number 1 at the time. It doesn't matter whether you have your starting quarterback or not. If you're the number 1 team in the country, you should have number 1 recruits across the board and still be able to go in there and compete. I mean, they took them to double overtime. And what my thinking on overtime in college football is, once you get there, it's anybody's ball game.
Oh, 100%.
They Notre Dame beat Florida State in the 3rd week of the season, 42-26. Ian Book threw for 201 yards, and that game was over very early on in that one. However, it has been a tough offseason for Florida State fans. Early last month, we lost our beloved head ball coach in Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden was 4-2 in his career against Notre Dame. This will be the 11th all-time meeting between Florida State and Notre Dame. Florida State holds a 6-4 all-time record. Again, as I mentioned, this will be the first game after the passing of Coach Bowden. It'll be at home. And we saw what happened last year when a top 10 team came into Tallahassee to take on Florida State.
Yes.
Dadgummit, the boys of Florida State are going to shock the world on opening night on Sunday, and they're going to knock off Notre Dame.
I hope so, but I just don't see it. I mean, Notre Dame does have a new quarterback. Ian Book has moved on. Um, but Mike Norvell was absolutely handed a disaster to him. This is his second season. I predicted that it'll take him 3 seasons to fix things. So I still think that this is the last year of absolute abysmal FSU play. I think next year you guys will be back. But Notre Dame is ranked in ninth in the preseason. I think it's on name recognition alone. I don't think that they're the number ninth team. I think they're far closer to 15th to 25 range. But they always are going to be overranked in the preseason. These ABCs got to pay the bills. They got to keep the lights on. So Notre Dame's always going to be ranked high. They're always going to be a televised game, and they're always going to play cupcakes. Unfortunately, they had to play in the ACC last year, so they had to actually play a real schedule. But they're back, and hey, good for them. They're taking on Georgia, week 1. But Notre Dame, they shouldn't be allowed in the college playoff if they don't join a conference. I kind of think that's a little bit BS. I hope Florida State wins this, but I think Notre Dame has the high level recruits because they're able to recruit so well. Because you can promise them that name recognition, that TV time. Obviously, South Bend isn't the most beautiful place in the world. It's not a destination, but that TV deal makes it very easy to recruit players, and they have great players there, and they'll always have great players while that goes on. So it is a double-edged sword. I don't think they should be allowed in the college football playoff till they, join a conference, but they couldn't have that TV deal if they were in a conference. So it might not make sense, but it makes dollars and cents for Notre Dame. But I don't think they're very good.
One thing that absolutely boggles my mind is Notre Dame plays one road game, right? And then they don't go on the road for over a month. Their next road game is on October 9th against Virginia Tech. And then they come home and they play 3 more home games, and then they don't go on the road again till November 13th.
It's the beauty of making your own schedule, independent.
Like, they have 1, 2, 3. They have 4 road games all year. At Florida State, at Virginia Tech, at Virginia, and at Stanford.
So no real tough road games.
No.
Yeah, with their schedule, if they go undefeated, I don't think they should still be even sniffing the college football playoff.
They have Wisconsin going to South Bend. They have USC and North Carolina back-to-back weeks. So that'll be, and then they have Navy. Navy always plays them tough. But that might be the toughest stretch of their schedule. They're going USC, North Carolina, and Navy.
Yeah, and Navy, they're just hard to play against because of the style they play.
Yeah, triple option.
Yeah, those military schools just play different football, and sometimes even the schools that are so much better than them tend to struggle, and they get caught sometimes too. It is very hard to adjust to that. So Navy can actually be, I agree with you, that can be a tough game, but that's not a schedule that blows me away. Wisconsin, who knows what they are? Maybe they'll be a really good program, and maybe they'll be ranked very high when they meet, but we'll have to see. On paper, that doesn't seem like, if they run the table playing 4 road games in, so-so opponents in one really great Georgia team. I don't think that's enough of a resume to get into the playoffs.
No, I don't either. Again, you just hope that the community doesn't sit there and go, oh, look, Notre Dame. We can make some money off of them.
They put him in the playoffs last year when they had no right being in there, and they just get blown out. So, does it really do that great for ratings? I don't know. I think everybody knows exactly what's going to happen if Notre Dame makes the playoffs. Although I would love another bye for Alabama to get to the college football final. So throw them in there at number 4 if Alabama's number 1. I won't complain. But let's get to our way too early college football playoff predictions. Who do you have?
You want 4-1 or you want 1-4?
Up to you. Any way you want to present them.
All right, I'll give you 4-1 here. I got Georgia in the 4 spot. Oklahoma in the 3, Ohio State in the 2, and Bama in the 1.
Oh, okay.
I
I'll
told
go.
you. I told you. I don't think Clemson makes the college football playoff this year because of that first loss to Georgia. And
See.
also, I'll tell you right now, I think if they get to the ACC title game and they play North Carolina, I like the Tar Heels.
Okay. I mean,
So that would leave Clemson with 2 losses, and I don't think a 2-loss Clemson team gets in over a 1-loss or a no-loss Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, or Bama. It just does not happen.
I had this different yesterday. I actually changed mine today. But my 4-1, I have Clemson right at that 4 spot. Last team making the playoffs. I've got Oklahoma sitting in that 3 spot. I got Ohio State at 2, and I got Alabama at 1.
All right, so the only thing you have different is you have Clemson and I have Georgia in that 4th spot.
Exactly. And I got Georgia being the 6th team out of the playoffs. I have Iowa State being the last team out, and then I got Miami at number 7. So
Miami will be lucky if they make it through halfway to the season in the top 10.
See, I think I only see Miami getting 2 losses.
Don't count out that Florida State game, man.
You really can't. It's a rivalry game. It's kind of like Alabama. Like Auburn could be, having a 5-loss season. You still don't count out Auburn when it's Auburn, Alabama. Anything can happen in college football rivalries. We've all learned that the hard way at some point.
Yeah, because I mean, right? You look at the schedule. That Florida State Miami game is in Tallahassee, and it's at the tail end of the year.
Yep.
It's the second to last ACC game of the year before they come up this way to the New England area and play at Boston College, which I'll be at that one. You can bet your hiney I will be.
I would bet you would be. I do know that you are a big Florida State Seminoles fan. Obviously, I'm a big Alabama fan. Although I think we kept it pretty unbiased, maybe except for Notre Dame here.
Yeah, I think if anything, we came to a great mutual agreement that we both don't like Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's true. I will be rooting for your Florida State Seminoles, and that's a Sunday game, which is a little extra for us.
Yeah, and I'll be rooting for your Crimson Tide in that first week because they're playing Miami.
Absolutely. There we go. We'll be on the same page there, backing each other's teams. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, feel free to find me on Twitter at Ian Bow. You can catch the handle right down below me. Head on over there, reach out, let me know what's going on. You can find me as well, my couple of podcasts at Titletown Takes. That's on YouTube, and at Chaos on the Rocks podcast as well. You can find me on Spotify, Anchor, and Apple Music and all that fun stuff.
Yep, and you can find me right here on the Tarps Off Sports YouTube page, all over the place, covering a bunch of different sports here. Tarpsoffsports.com. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button below.